He asked him to walk the land of what I am promising you. Immediately, I just had this revelation where I thought about the Bible. The Bible has over 7,000 promises to men. How do you know what those promises are if you don't walk through it?
Oh, okay.
How do you know what is rightfully yours?
Yeah.
Because when we become Christians, we are adopted into the kingdom. We are called God's heir.
When we get saved.
When we're saved,
Yeah.
right? Once you are adopted into the kingdom, once you are an heir of God, every promise is yes and amen. Every promise. But
if you don't read it, how
if
would
you don't
know?
walk the land, if you don't walk it, how do you know what those promises are?
Hello again. Welcome to the Carey podcast. I'm your host, Donovan Carey, with my lovely wife, Terah. And this is episode 7.
Yes.
Yeah, well, this episode we went through Genesis chapter 12 and 13. And let's just get right into it.
Yes. Did you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I'll be honest. The first time I read it, I was a little concerned. I was like, did we give ourselves enough material to work with, But on like second and third read, I'm like, okay, I started to kind of get more and more points, kind of break through. So that was kind of my experience. How about yours?
Honestly, I pulled a lot.
Yeah, first read?
So technically this is not my first read. But when I read it the very first time, no, I didn't pull anything, right?
Yeah.
I just kind of like read through it and I was like, okay. But this time, like actually studying it, I did find some things that really we can apply to life today, some lessons.
So, I guess we could just kind of start. Well, what I'll do first is, where did we leave off, right? So where we left off, Abraham's father, Terah, there we go.
Yes.
Terah takes Lot, Abraham, and Abraham's wife Sarah.
Yes.
And they leave Ur.
Their native land.
Ur, and they end up in Haran.
Yes.
Right? And in Haran, that's where Terah dies.
Yes.
So right after, we in chapter 12.
Yes.
And God is talking to Abraham immediately. He ain't giving no rest, no time to mourn. Abraham, I need you to leave this country, Haran, and I need you to get out of your father's house and go into the land that I made for you.
This was something that I believe the Lord was just reiterating to him because he actually did speak to him when he was still in Ur.
Okay.
But when we look at chapter 11, we see that Terah is the one that actually led Abraham and his wife and Lot to the land of Haran. So I wanted to ask you, do you think the Lord spoke to Terah to lead him there?
So that's funny. That was actually a point I was thinking about when we were reading chapter 11. And from my perspective, I think he did. I think he did. So number one thing reading this I'm realizing is they're a very wealthy family.
Yeah.
And so why else would I think of a wealthy person leaving? There's 2 reasons. Either to acquire more wealth, which it does look like they did in Haran, based on my reading of chapter 12. But also, so I'm kind of stuck in between. So either I believe Terah left to acquire more wealth.
Yeah.
But the reason I go against that is because they stopped in Haran. That wasn't actually his end point. Right? So that brings me to maybe God spoke to Terah, which is why he left, and Abraham is actually finishing what Terah started. And we know that wouldn't be the first time that happened. Well, all right, it would be the first time that happened, but we know that won't be the only time that happened, as in like the temple, the holy temple that was started by David. Solomon actually is the one who carried it out. Yeah, so how about you? Do you think that God spoke to Terah or directly to Abraham?
So I think he spoke directly to Abraham. If we move forward to Acts 7, chapter 7, verses 2-4, there is one of the first deacons of the church. His name is Stephen. They named him they describe him as a man full of faith in the Holy Spirit. So this is something that was revealed to him by the Lord, where he speaks to his people and he says, "Brothers and fathers, listen to me. Our glorious God appeared to our ancestor Abraham in Mesopotamia before he settled in Haran. God told him, leave your native land and your relatives and come into the land that I will show you. So Abraham left the land of Chaldeans and lived in Haran until his father died. Then God brought him here to the land where you now live. Now, the reason why I feel like God did not speak to Terah is because God had told Abraham to leave his family and to leave his native land to go to the land of Canaan, which is the land that he promised him.
The promised
right?
land, yeah.
But instead, he followed his father and Lot and his wife to the land of Haran. Now, Haran is also technically in the land of Mesopotamia. So this is technically still his native land. He didn't go to the land of Canaan, which God had instructed him in the very beginning.
Okay.
So when we look at Terah's name, the meaning of his name, it actually means delay. And then Haran actually means parched or barren. And when you think of parched, it means dry. When you think of barren, it means like unproductivity, infertility, unfruitfulness, right? In my opinion, and what I gathered from this was, because we saw like in the next chapters, like 2 through 3, God is giving him all these promises, right?
Right.
Like I want you to do this,
right,
and I have all of this, right? The next few verses. Yeah. But what happens is he goes with his dad, which I believe was the spirit of delay here that was going on, leads him to another place that God did not instruct him to go. And he settles there. Not like they just stayed there for a little bit, but he settles there until his dad dies.
Let me ask, do you think that could have been, and it's because it's something that's going to come up here, do you think that could have been God's plan? Because the land was not promised to Terah. And if Terah would have Terah, sorry. If Terah would have went, Terah would have been in charge of the promised land. Because
you mean him dying in Haran?
Him dying in Haran.
Oh, for sure. I agree with your statement with Terah. I do believe that was God's doing.
That was God's will.
That was God's will, because he was, in my opinion, he was blocking what needed to be done. Abram was supposed to go to the land of Canaan to fulfill everything that God is trying to do through Abram, which will eventually be Abraham, right? But right now, he has followed the lead of his father and went into this land that God was not promising him. This is not the promised land here.
To even back up what you say, God specifically says in that first verse, and from your father's house. Yes. Right? So even though his father's dead, it's pretty much saying that Haran, that this period you have been in your father's house. Because that's what, when I was reading it, I was looking at it and just saying, God is pretty much saying you need to step from under your father's shadow here, because I have something for you, right? Like there's something for you. I have plans for you in this, which is the promised land, because the whole nation, right? We go into literally verse 2, right, where he says, a great nation, I will bless you and make your name great. But the only way I could give you that is if you step from under your father. And the reason, because they pointed out that they're from pagan land. So
right. I was gonna say, I think it's a little bit more than just being in his father's shadow. I think it's really because of just the environment, the fact that they, like you said, they were, well, based on Joshua 24:2, when he was speaking to the Israelites, he did say that Terah served other gods. Yeah. So
I want to say Mesopotamia is like Greece, or Mesopotamia is one of those big nations.
So from my understanding, it's like, it's like Iraq, parts of Syria, Turkey. Okay. So it's that area.
Okay, all right. Yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah, I think I did hear it was Iraq.
Yes.
Actually. Yeah.
So I believe, is what Iraq is today.
Yeah, I looked that up. Is where Iraq is today.
Yes.
Yeah, so I mean, I can understand your point. So
yeah, so I personally don't think that God spoke to Terah, because Terah was worshiping other gods in this point. He in communication with other false gods or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's not trying to hear the Lord thy God, especially knowing God's nature. I'm not.
Well, I don't know, because I've known God to use his enemies, right? So I could always see God taking them to Haran to, I mean, and this is all speculation clearly at this point, what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. I could see God getting them out of Ur to get to Haran so that Terah can die in Haran because it's on the way to where they need to be.
I personally think that was the enemy. I think that was the enemy's doing because you're already worshiping me. I have some influence here. I know the plans that God is trying to do with Abram. I'm going to use you to take him off course. And I think that's how life is just in general today, where the enemy will use people that's close to you to take you off course of where the Lord is trying to take you. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like they'll be in your ear saying, oh, you're not good enough. Or this, or you don't have enough money for that, or how you gonna do that? You know, like discouraging and trying to deter you, or being in circles, friendship circles that can keep you distracted from your destiny, your God-given destiny. Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
From God's will.
From God's will. So I think this was one of those situations where the enemy was using Abram's father, someone that's close to him, to take him off course, take him to Haran, settle in Haran. Because if I can have any say in this, I don't want you to make it to the land of Canaan. Yeah. Because we know what comes from that, right?
Yeah. And they're doing my bidding right now.
Exactly. I really do believe that the enemy used Terah to delay Abram from what God was trying to do for Abram, out of Abram and through Abram, should I say, right? Yeah.
Why do you think God chose Abram? I mean, this is honestly, I don't think we'll ever really get a real answer, but it made me think, like, why would, and it's more a rhetorical question. I wasn't asking directly, but like, why would God choose Abram? I mean, I don't know how religious Abram was, but the fact that Abram was still close enough to follow Terah, he's living in a land of paganism. I think the likelihood is that he may not have been that religious at that time, but I'm not sure. It's a little difficult to tell for me at this point, just because Abraham, from this, if I don't know about his dad, so like if I isolated himself, he's building altars to God. He seems extremely in touch with God. But then I'm like comparing it to, but he's following his dad, who also is clearly a pagan based on Joshua.
It's probably out of love, you know, like he loves his father. I don't want to separate from my father. I want to follow, you know, like he's my father.
Yeah.
And God knew that. That's why God told him to leave his family.
Yeah.
He told him to leave his family. Yet he went and followed his father.
Yeah. It's so consistent because it's just like I don't know the Bible verse directly, but Jesus says essentially to follow me, you have to hate your family, right? And hate in the Bible means something different than the way we see hate.
Like less
but
than
I mean,
me.
You can't love them as much as me. And I just think it's interesting because this is exactly what God is telling Abram at this time. Hey, you have to hate your father, quotes. You have to almost be done with your father because of his ways is not my ways in order for me to give you the blessing.
Yes.
And when I give you the blessing, it's going to be a great nation of people that follow me.
Exactly.
Right? Okay, so we get there, and so God essentially says, hey, I'm going to make your name great.
Which is complete opposite of what we saw with the Tower of Babel, where they said, let's make our name great. Right?
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So here you see the Lord saying, I'm going to do it, versus man saying, I'm going to make my own name great.
That actually makes perfect sense. It's God making it happen. And it's not filled with pride. Right?
Yes.
It's not filled with pride.
God-given. Right.
So, and that brings me to the verse 3 where I was looking at it, and it says, and in thee shall all families on the earth be blessed. Now, to me, I saw this as like a dual thing here. All right. First thing I thought about was Jesus.
Yes.
Right. That's if that came to you.
Yes.
So that essentially Jesus is going to come and give us all a chance at redemption.
Yes.
Whether you're a Christian right now or not.
Yeah.
Right. So Jesus dying is not just for those who were Christian, well, at that time Jews, right, or those who believed in him. No, Jesus dying is for all of us to have a chance.
Yes.
At redemption and at salvation.
Yes.
The other thing that I saw that kind of made my antennas go up, and it's kind of confirmed later when he's talking about the dust, right? I don't know if you remember that part. Is the Abrahamic religions and how they got so widespread over the earth, right? So like I know when we think of Abraham, we're just thinking Christianity, but really
the Muslims,
Jewish, Muslims, and Christians are all coming from the Abrahamic tree. And so when I see this, that kind of rang that bell as well. Like, oh, okay, you know, from Abraham's perspective, like, no, that majority of the world now is either those three religions.
That's literally what came to my mind when I was reading it. I was like, oh no, God really fulfilled his promise when he said that. And I know that at that time, it's no way Abraham knew exactly what God meant. He probably just imagine. Like, oh, you know, maybe I get some land or something, or I don't know, I get some kids. I don't know, but definitely not what we have here today.
Yeah, and
millions and millions of people.
And the thing to keep in mind is that Sarah is barren.
Yes, I know.
So on top of God making this level of a promise, say, I'm going to give you a land, I'm going to give you a great nation, da da da. Remember, what they considered a nation was their kids back then, right? Like, I'm going to have kids, I'm going to have so many kids, and they're going to have so many kids. That's a nation. That's a tribe. It's a nation, whatever. And his wife
can't have kids.
And he did not have a second wife.
Yeah.
Right? So that, too, is also just a kind of a testament of faith, right? Literally, the next verse, it says, Abram departed, right? So we know that he's just walking out on faith at this point.
Yes.
Saying, all right, I don't know what you're going to do for me, God.
And I'm 75 years old.
75
He
years
is
old.
75.
But to
his
be
wife
fair,
haven't had a child.
To be fair, at this juncture in time, 75 seems to be like a young boy. Because these guys were living for a long time.
I understand, but...
Like, he was 75, but he still was under his father's house. We consider 75, you know, like, whatever you ain't done, you probably ain't going to do, you know? And they're literally, like you said, God is just starting his life for real at 75.
Yeah. Yeah, so it moves on and it talks about how he departed as the Lord has spoken to him with Lot, right? And at this point, I still feel like he is being partially obedient. Still being partially obedient, because what did God tell him in the very beginning? Leave your family. What does he do? He takes Lot with him.
Yeah.
He takes Lot with him.
And that's, you know, that's I didn't catch that until later. But I will say there's a lesson there for sure, because everybody can't go.
Yes, everybody can't go with you.
That is such the hardest thing.
It is.
It's the hardest thing. Like, you hear so many people, especially people who made it out, like they live with regret sometimes, right?
Some people are baggage.
Yeah,
you know, I hate to say it like that, but you know.
Yeah. So here we are, right? Abraham takes, like he said, he takes his wife, who he's supposed to take, but then he also takes
his
Lot,
nephew.
His nephew.
Yes.
But then he doesn't only take that, right? He takes his riches. Right, so he takes his riches, he takes his servants, right? He takes all of them, and he goes into the land of Canaan.
Yes,
where God told him, "Okay,
this where he was supposed to go from the very beginning."
Yeah, it's called Sikkim.
Far as Sikkim.
And okay, so the Lord then appeared to Abram.
Yes, so now God is back, and he's like, "All right,
this is where I want you.
This is where I wanted you to be." Yes, and he tells him that this is the land that I'm going to give your descendants.
And to Abram's credit, he built an altar there. Right? Yes. We don't hear nothing about Lot doing nothing.
He goes to somewhere between Bethel and, it's so funny, but AI.
Yeah, right.
It's the first time AI been invented back then, right?
So here it says high.
Oh.
Yeah, it's high. So it's probably pronounced AI, but yeah.
In the NLT version, they just have AI. So
they just changing all type of stuff. All right, so
it's AI.
It's AI. So he goes into
and he builds an altar.
He builds an altar.
So I wanted to ask you, because clearly building altars in worship is very, very important at this point. We see it multiple times throughout the Bible.
Yep.
As Christians today, what are ways that we can worship?
Worship or build altars?
Both.
Like just worship, period?
Both.
And so it seems to me that God appreciates the gifts, right? And though I don't know how much use God gets from them, it seems like he appreciates them. So like, for instance, we'll go back to Cain and Abel. He appreciated the gift. We don't know that God ate any meat, but he appreciated the gift of the meat. Noah, God appreciated the smell, the aroma of the burnt offerings. So I think the gifts, right? So I think if you have a gift, God blesses you with a talent, God blesses you with any gift that is. I think that that's a form of worship. Yeah. I think same even with, I do think tithes is also a form of worship, right? Tithes, or we're Christians, so we believe in service, right? I believe service is a form of worship. Giving to others, right? Like these are stuff that Jesus either preached or we see throughout the Bible. I think ultimately it's a level of service and sacrifice. I think ultimately that's what worship is. Yeah. So it's either you're doing some level of sacrifice to yourself, yes, or you're doing some level of service to someone, for someone else. Yeah. I will say, because when I say gifts, right, there is a difference, and we touched a little bit on this. All right, so I'm singing. I can sing. I sing for the Lord. There's a difference between, to me, there's a difference between actually singing for the Lord and singing because you can sing and you want to be seen singing, right? Just because you say the words of God don't necessarily mean you're worshiping God. Yeah. And that's one of those points that I know can get lost, but, I always see, I go back to Revelation as always. And, you got the angels singing together as a group. I think God, there's something to God liking, especially when it comes to songs. Yes. There being a group. And I don't know, but if it's too based on yourself, I don't know if that's actually considered worship. Yeah. I'm saying I don't know. Yeah. I think it's really, but God reads the heart. God knows. He knows the heart. He knows the heart. How about you? After I done talked for 30 minutes. Yes. And took all of them. Oh, go ahead. No, you didn't actually. Oh, okay. So go ahead. I'm going to cover the scriptures. So, no, actually. So this is actually from Romans 12. Okay. 1. And this is Paul speaking, and I know you heard this before, but he says we are to offer our bodies as a living sacrifice. That means to me, like walking in obedience, letting him use you to fulfill his purpose now. You know what I'm saying? Let him work through you. So I would say like service, like you said, and then also through prayer. You may not think. Oh, I do. I definitely think so. I forgot it in my long list. I was actually surprised. I expected you. Know me. I know. I truly believe that. I expected you to say prayer, but you actually didn't. Yeah. So I'm going to mention it. So prayer is another form of worship. Yeah. Where even David says it, where in Psalms 141:2, he says, "Let my prayer be set before you as incense, the lifting up my hands as the evening sacrifice." So prayer is another form of worship. And you know what's, and this just may be my preference, I think the special thing about prayer in comparison to all the rest of them is that in most cases you do it mostly without an audience. Yes. So like mostly everything else, there's some level of an audience. It's intimacy with. But there's the thing about prayer is like if you're praying and like nobody's there. I'm not talking about congregation prayer because that's a different thing. But if you're praying just you and God, I think that's something very special because it's a level of intimacy. I don't like the term intimacy, but intimacy with God. It's a strange term. Is it? It's a strange. No, it's not strange for ladies, but for guys, it's a very strange term. He's a male figure. It's just a strange term. Okay. It's a strange term. I'm just calling it what it is. I know any guys watching this would be like, intimacy with God. It's God. No, it's not. I mean, it is God, but I don't know. I just threw you off. Yeah. So the point I was just making was the thing about prayer is that it's not out. It's typically something that's like it's valuable because it's very. You're not doing it for eyes, and it's proving you're not doing it for eyes because there's no eyes there. Like even Jesus said, close the door.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's say close the door of the closet or something like that.
Close the closet door? We're going to go with that. It's something in that nature.
Terah put the verse on there.
Yeah. And then the last one is going to be praise. So Hebrews 13:15, it says, through Jesus, therefore, let us continually offer to God a sacrifice of praise, the fruit of the lips that openly profess his name. So praise is a form of worship for the Lord. So you have serving. Mm-hmm. What's the other ones you said? You said so many.
I said using your gift.
Yeah, so gifts, serving,
sacrifice, praying,
praise.
You kind of talked about worship, but it's something I found because I don't think that's what the altar is used for here.
You don't think so?
Not pure worship. It's not. No. It seems to me.
But we just said sacrifice.
No. But okay, yeah. So I'll take that back. Yes.
Yeah.
So the altar is used for worship. I'm sorry. I should not say that. But it seems like the altar is also a place for God to show up, like to actually be there, presence-wise. And the reason I say that is because I got curious about the whole altar thing because from Noah all the way, they've built like 10 altars already, and we only that's like the span of like 5 chapters, right? And so I was like, does it tell you how to build the altar, right? Because like I was just curious, to be honest, and it does in Exodus. I don't have exactly what it says, but I know one of the big things was like they wanted to keep the parts of the altar, so the parts that they used, at least in Exodus, like pure. So like not hewn, right? Hewn meaning like not chopped up, or they wanted it to be almost like clean and perfect. And it made me think about just like how we pray and where we pray. I know in like Muslim religions, they got to clean themselves before they pray. It just made me think like maybe that's something that I should look more into. I
always thought like prayer and praising and singing worship, like I just assumed that was our form of building an altar today. It's more of spiritual versus something physical now.
Yeah. Well, no, so it wasn't necessarily that I'm saying it's not spiritual, but if we consider the body a temple, and that's where they would used to speak with God, then I'm saying we know in Exodus they're kind of telling us how to build. I gotta find the actual verse. Okay, so like when you're looking it up, there's a few places where they talk about building an altar, right? So they got earth. God instructed the Israelites to build altars of earth in Exodus 20 and 24.
Okay.
Unhewn stone, right? Unhewn stones are pretty much stones that's not. Yeah, there's a lot of places where they're telling them how to build it. So I'm not gonna go into each one, but I think that's something worth us looking into. We'll get there. That's why I didn't look that deep into it, because I'm like, we'll get there, and I think that'll be a really good conversation.
Yeah.
But definitely, I think the whole altar thing, and I like the idea of what you're saying, like, hey, just praying as an altar. Or not praying, but just worshiping is our version of an altar, because it does seem as after Jesus came back, we went to a more spiritual as opposed to physical. But it's something I would like to look into.
Yeah, because
just to see how we
was that sacrificial offering. So now we don't have to sit here and build altars anymore, like how they had to.
But see, what's funny is churches still have altars.
I know they still have altars, but it's still spiritual. You just go and you go pray, right?
Yeah, but why build it?
Come to the altar and pray. No? Oh, you mean like why you need a physical?
Yeah, if that was the case, why is everybody like why do? I mean, I'll wait till we get there, because there's a few places clearly where we're gonna talk about altars in the future. But I do want to see, because you're right. In the same breath, Paul, I believe it's Paul. Paul says so much, but I believe it's Paul who told us that the body is the temple, right?
Yes.
Like this God dwells in here, which would mean that this would be the altar.
Yes.
So, we'll figure it out.
We'll get there.
Hey, if you got any comments,
we'll go a little bit deeper then at that point.
If you've read further along, please don't hesitate. Leave a comment. Let us know what your thoughts are. As you guys know, we are reading through it piece by piece. So we're learning as we go.
We're just trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together.
Yes.
So let's move on.
Where were we? I guess we had where he built an altar. Okay.
Yes.
That makes sense. So verse 7, right? So he builds an altar in the land of Canaan where God pretty much tells him this is where your seed will be.
Yes. Okay, so so now we're moving on to verse 10, where now Abraham's faith is tested. Because, like you said, the land is filled with famine. And he clearly gets scared. He's like, we need to leave. Let's go to Egypt, where God didn't even tell him to leave.
No.
God told him to be in the land of Canaan. I think it's crazy because this really shows how he has a lack of faith, a lack of trust in God's word. He didn't even consult with God to say, God, at least like, why is this happening? Like, should I go to Egypt? Should I, like nothing. He immediately let his fear take over, and then he left. For you to leave, you clearly think you're gonna die, right? You're worried you're gonna starve to death, right? If that's why you're leaving. But God already told you, your descendants. How many times God has spoken to him at this point about these descendants? Okay, why would you think you're gonna die right now?
I'm gonna look at his situation in its entirety, right? He's wrong because he should have had more faith.
Yes.
But one of the things I'm looking at is my wife is barren. It's the lack of faith, right? Yes. My wife is barren. This land is barren. And you telling me I'm about to build a great nation here.
Yeah.
And it clearly got to him. We know Abram was no Noah. We can see that, right? Now, one of the things I took from it when I was reading it was that sometimes what God has for us it don't come shiny.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like it don't come in the package that you expected it to come in. And I feel like we all that's happened.
And the route to get there
it's never a straight route like you thought. And I always look at my life and I'm like, okay, even when I ended up here, I ended up where I wanted to be, like where I believe God was telling me to be.
Yes.
But the route I thought I was going to take there, it typically is never how it goes.
Yes.
I'm thinking I'm going this way, and I ended up over here, over here, went back a little bit, and then I got there, right?
But you know what? I wonder if sometimes it's due to us. Our doing, because we see that with Abraham.
Yeah,
right.
That's true.
God told him to go here,
and outside influences,
here.
Right?
Exactly.
Outside influences. So you make a strong point there. So in this case, though, he gets there. God is telling him, "I'm going to give you exactly what you want.
Yeah,
exactly what you want,
or at least what you need.
But it does not look like. It does not look like. Well, I said what he wanted because he went. Right, so he wanted it. Clearly, he wanted. They made a point to tell us that Sarah was barren, which to me shows that he wanted children.
Yeah.
So when I look at that, it does not look the way he thought, and I just think there's a lesson there because sometimes what we think success looks like is not actually what it looks like immediately. Now, sometimes it takes some work. Sometimes it takes a generation or two later. And I think, especially in our community, we do a horrible job at thinking generationally. We do a horrible job.
Well, it's always a right now.
Like everything has to be done right now. And I've seen other cultures and how they adapt this mentality, and they don't think the way we think at all. Yeah. Like Black people, we love to talk about generational wealth. That is the new buzzword, right? But for some reason, we believe generational wealth means I need to be rich today and pass it down to my kids. And that's not necessarily generational wealth. And I think I told you about this. I've known people who you could tell that their family was thinking generations later. So that their family may have lived a not the wealthiest life, not the shiniest lifestyle, but they set their kids up that by the time their kids get there, their kids have very low bills. So the kids may not even be living a crazy lifestyle, but now they have worked hard so they can pay for their kids' college, so their kids don't got student loans. They
or a mortgage
or
low payment.
Then they help. Yeah, then they help. They pay 50% of the mortgage off, so now their kids have a very low mortgage. In other cultures, they think 3-4 generations ahead. They're not thinking about today. I think we can capitalize on that. I think a lot of our situation does come from history of you're trying to make up for the past. So you're trying to make up so much that you think you deserve it. So there's a little bit of that and a little bit of entitlement.
Yeah.
But, we could definitely use some of that thinking. Because in this case, we're watching this happen with Abram where
he's like, I don't see it today.
I don't see it. Yeah. So God never even promised it to him. He promised it to his kids.
Yeah.
So once again, going back to, I need to be on wealthy land now, as opposed to trusting God and saying, all right, I just got to work this famous land because my descendants will get the wealthy land.
And I also questioned, I was like, what if God was doing that to drive the Canaanites out of the land for him? I don't know. I thought about it. I was like, well, what if that was the case? It could have been a double thing going on. It could have been testing his faith. Yeah. It could have been that. Who knows? I don't know. I'm just kind of assuming here.
No, that's true.
But it was something I was like, maybe it was a bigger plan there. And then now I got to take this whole other route to get the Israelites to come and take the land. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. But it's just something that came to mind as I was reading it. Because I was like, Abraham don't know what God had up his sleeves. And then he immediately all right, I got to go. we got to go. Let's go to Egypt.
So, okay. So we see that he continues. He goes into Egypt.
Yes.
Now, this way it gets kind of interesting. And you look... From our perspective today, I think everybody, as you read these verses, you kind of look sideways at Abraham, like, huh?
Yeah.
You got the... So essentially, he tells his wife, who I believe is kind of his...
It is.
His, I think it's a half sister or a stepsister.
A half sister. Like in Genesis 20:12, he actually says, "Besides, she really is my sister, the daughter of my father, though not of my mother. She became my wife." They have the same father, not the same mother.
So that's his half sister.
So it is his half sister.
Yeah.
And they go into the land of Egypt, and apparently Sarah is very beautiful, and he's scared,
they're gonna kill me.
They're gonna kill me, right? So he's scared, and first thing he does is tell Sarah to lie. I'm gonna consider it a lie because it's half the truth, and I feel like a half a truth is a lie, right? Because at the end of the day, that's your wife. It's your wife. Yes, it's your sister, but the title is wife.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? He not only was he being deceitful, but he was causing his wife to be deceitful.
Yeah, I thought about just the lack of fear of God. He feared man more than he feared God.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
He was afraid that the Pharaoh was going to kill him, right? Or not even the Pharaoh, because he wasn't even thinking about it. He was just thinking about the Egyptians as a whole was going to kill him for his wife, instead of fearing that God's already promised me this if I don't follow God's commandment of me, or commands of me, or however you say it. But then that's what he should have been fearing. In other words. And so...
Or just trusting that God said he was going to protect him.
Yeah.
Just trusting God's promise. God gave him a promise. And it's just it went out the door.
It happens.
Right?
Even today, it happens.
Yes.
It's so easy. It's what God promises are. He's supposed to come through. But let me tell you,
when things hit rock bottom, or things start looking a little rough.
Yeah. Yeah, the flesh starts to take over.
The flesh starts to take over. The doubt, the fear.
Yeah.
All the things are not of God.
Yeah. In one breath, we could look at it and say he was not a man of faith, which is easy to do here. But when we put ourselves in his shoes, I think it's... Once again, I point out, his wife was also barren.
Yeah.
He's 75 years old. These are also things we have to take into account. So from that perspective, you kind of I see why he would do it. He shouldn't have done it. And it's a lesson in God work miracles, right? But at this point, we're still fairly early in the Bible as well. We got to remember that. Also, we got to remember, he did not grow up in a Christian society. Oh, not even Christian. He did not even grow up in his God society.
Yeah.
Where he grew up was pagan, right? So, once again, he is no Noah.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he's human. He's human.
Yet. At this point, he's not Noah. Because he gets there. Just right now, he learning.
Yeah. Well,
he's learning God. He's building his relationship. We're literally watching him build his relationship.
And once again,
with God.
And Noah was already 500 years old. You gain wisdom typically as you get older. So when Noah was 500 years old, before God spoke to him and said it's going to take 100. I'm going to flood the earth, build this ark. That's 500 years of Noah seeing God come through.
Yeah.
As opposed to Abram, who's 75 years. As opposed to us, who sometimes are 20 years, maybe. Sometimes we take credit for it, even though God came through.
Yeah.
So the point I'm just making is like there is also a maturity factor to this.
Yeah.
And we know he clearly wasn't that mature because he still was living under his father.
Yeah.
Like his father still was controlling his.
You're not letting this one go.
I'm not, because I think it adds a lot of context.
Yeah.
Like he still had not earned anything on his own in his own life.
Yeah.
And I think there is something to that. So he's doing what any other kid would do straight out of high school, living in the dorms, running out of money. They go donate plasma, right? You know what I'm saying? Like they go do something. I'm just saying they do something that they probably wouldn't normally think to do because of lack of faith. That's what I was just trying to say.
Yes.
Like it's just lack of faith. They doing what they can do to survive in that moment, and that's what he did.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
So at this point, Abraham was correct. Yes, they saw her. They saw she was beautiful, and they bring her to the Pharaoh. And
the Pharaoh treats them pretty well.
Yeah, pretty well. Like he gives him, oxen, sheep, donkeys, camels.
Abram's wife must have been
money.
Gorgeous. Sarah must have been gorgeous.
She was a baddie. Clearly.
She had to be. It's funny because I don't even think he expected to go to the Pharaoh. He just expected that they might have killed him and they're not going to kill him.
Yeah.
But she must have been so beautiful that they was like, I can't even have her. We need to take her to the Pharaoh. And the Pharaoh thought she was so beautiful. He's like, all right, I'm going to give you this,
and your brother.
And your little nephew. Your nephew
and
also.
And the nephew, everybody.
Yeah. And
he was very generous.
I thought what comes next was funny because the Pharaoh, it don't seem like the Pharaoh even did nothing wrong. And God started sending plagues to him and his family. And
I question, because right after they end up bringing Abram in, he summons Abram in and he's asking him, he's like, why you didn't tell me this was your wife?
Yeah.
And I question, I'm like, well, how did he know?
How did he find out?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, did he have like a sorcerer or something? Or did God come to him in a dream?
I thought it because it did kind of skip to how he knew.
Yeah.
It just went literally from God plagued his family. And
he just knew, like, it was her.
It was her. Well, he probably
and the wife, not even just her.
That she was his wife.
Yes. I'm like, how did he know that?
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. But what I will say is it also shows that the Pharaoh feared God more than Abram feared God.
Yeah. Because was like, wait a minute.
Yeah, it seemed like the Pharaoh was like, wait a minute, what?
How your God outdoing my God?
Yeah. Oh,
you know what I'm saying? Gods, right? Yeah. Because clearly they're probably thinking, I'm Pharaoh. I'm supposed to be protected. My God's supposed to be protecting me.
Yep.
Now, that protection is gone because my household just got affected by whatever you're worshiping. You gotta go.
For whatever reason, you didn't even tell me.
And you didn't tell me.
And what I found even more telling, he didn't even ask for the stuff back.
No, he was like, no, take your stuff. I don't want nothing associated with you. You, your wife, your nephew, and every single thing. I don't want it here.
So this to me is a shining example of this is God's pretty much saying, my will be done.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I don't care how stupid you think you are, how stupid you want to be, Abram. My will is going to be done. So if the Pharaoh is a casualty in this, then he's a casualty in this. To me, it goes back to that war mindset. Yeah. Like we always talk about the grace and the mercy and these are all great characteristics of God. But understand that first and foremost, God is the king. He is the king. And so if someone is a casualty to him needing to get done what he will get done, it happens.
Yeah.
And that's why.
And in this case, I cannot let this pagan king defile your wife.
Because that's what was coming next.
Yeah.
That's what was coming. I believe that's why God did it.
Oh, for sure.
Because remember, Sarah is supposed to bear that. We don't talk about it that much, but Sarah is supposed to bear essentially Israel, which would be where Jesus comes from. So what I see is we got to keep this line pure.
Yeah,
that's the whole reason, right? This is the whole reason when I read this Bible, I believe God chose people like Abram. God chose people like Jacob, who we'll get to him. But these people who really, when we're reading them, we're like, they ain't that faithful. They don't seem to be that great.
Yeah.
Why is God choosing them? It's because he has a plan, and this plan is to get Jesus here. And the only way we can get Jesus here at the exact time that he wants him, in the exact place he wants him, under the exact beliefs that he wants him. Right? Remember, Jesus came in the flesh. So that means if Mary or Joseph at that time does not believe in this God, Jesus could be somebody completely different. And so I think that what's interesting is that we're seeing it from back here.
Yeah.
God is like, Pharaoh technically ain't do nothing wrong, but God is like, no. No, I will plague your entire house.
I've been looking for a reason anyways.
I've been looking for a reason. I thought that was really cool, really interesting. And then Pharaoh kicks him out, says, take everything.
You gotta go.
You got
to go. Take your stuff. You better call Tyrone. You better call Tyrone. So after that.
Now, I hold on. Before we go there, because one thing I did see, I didn't see, but I thought about was that I believe God, I'm going back to the marriage thing. God saw Abram and Sarah as one flesh.
Oh, yes.
So by that happening, God was actually protecting Abram, right? Because God has something that he wants to be done with Sarah.
Yes.
Also, I believe the reason Sarah was barren is because Sarah was not supposed to have children until God needed her to have children.
Yes.
Because had she had children back in it's a possibility that Terah could have had influence on them and they could have been pagan. Right? Could have destroyed everything down the line. So,
God's will.
It's all about timing.
His plan is always the best plan because, again, like I said before, he sees the whole picture. Yeah. And he knows what's best for us. We can only see right now. So, moving forward.
So now we're going to chapter 13.
Yes. So we're in chapter 13. And it talks about how Abram returns back to the promised land.
Fat pockets.
He comes back with livestock, silver, and gold, right? So he's very rich. But to me, when I saw this, you may look at it and see like, well, he did gain, riches and da-da-da-da. But when you think about it, the way he gained it just was not godly. Like, he had to be deceitful in order to do that. If he was honest and said this was his wife, he wouldn't have received this stuff from the Pharaoh. Yeah. I think this was, in my opinion, it was unnecessary because God was going to provide him with everything that he needed regardless. Like him going to Egypt, him coming back with all this riches. I mean, cool, but was it worth it? Because he also brought back something that's going to cause brokenness in his family later anyways. So, I mean, right now they're not talking about it. Yep. But even with all of this, sometimes when you're chasing after things like, money and you're doing it ungodly, sometimes it can come with consequences.
I think it always comes with consequences.
Always comes with consequences. You're right.
It's just how soon you see them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
And one thing I was when I was reading it, I saw that Abram should have been thinking like the Pharaoh was thinking. So think about this. The Pharaoh, something happens, his house gets cursed, essentially plagued. And the Pharaoh is like, you could keep all of it. I don't want none of it. Yeah. And that's what Abram should have been doing. Hey, you guys believe in something I don't believe in. You can keep it over there.
Yes.
He didn't do that.
And he brought it with him.
He wanted to bring it with him. And I believe that's why later on, when they take the promised land, and my memory, I'm trying to remember, but God tells them to destroy everything and don't even mate with the other people.
Yes.
Because I think what God is seeing from here is that this is how it begins. This is how idolatry, this is how these other religions get into what we're doing, because you just want to take the good from it. And we see that today. How many times do we see people be like, they taking stuff from Buddhism, they taking stuff from this religion, they taking stuff from that religion. And I'm speaking because I'm one of the, I was there. Like I was there before where like you learn something new and you like, nah, this is good though. Like this is healthy though. This is, and you trying to take everything, but where did it get you? You know, did it get you anywhere? Did
just
it get
more
you?
Confused?
Just confused. Yeah, just confused and not walking the straight and narrow at that point, right? So I think when I see it from that perspective, I'm like, oh, yeah, this can't last.
Yeah.
Yes, it's temporary. Yes, it's quick. And we, you know, what's funny to me is that we saw something very similar when they left Haran. Right? In verse 5, it says, in all their substance that they had gathered and the souls they had gotten in Haran. So they had gotten servants in Haran. They had gotten riches in Haran. And then they go to Egypt. They picked up more riches.
He's just picking up
so
more
he's
and more
just
baggage.
taking stuff from other places.
Yes.
Instead of going where God told him to go.
Yes. I think this part is interesting. We know in chapter 12, he builds this place of worship, right? This between Bethel and Ai,
this altar,
right?
Yep.
This altar, right? And then at some point, the famine happens, and then due to his unbelief, right? Essentially, he leaves this place of worship, and then he goes to Egypt. He leaves, right? And then after all of that happened, and he see God's doing, like, oh, wait a minute, this is real. He's real.
Yeah.
He goes back to that same place of worship, which is what we see in chapter 13. But I feel like when I read that, that reminds me of us today backsliding. When we have unbelief, or maybe backsliding may not be the correct term, but where you stray away, right?
Yeah.
We've been there, right? We strayed away because we grew up in the Christian faith. We grew up, our family did not play. We were in church every single Sunday. Then as time went on, things started throwing our beliefs off, right?
Dibbling, dabbling.
Dibbling, dabbling. The beliefs started to get a little, hazy, that we end up straying away. And then once we had that encounter, right, we end up finding our way back to that place of worship. And for some people, they may not have an encounter, but or God may come through for them or something in that nature, where they end up finding their way back to worship. And I thought this was like a prime example of that.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Where Abraham find his way back to God, essentially, right? So after that, we know that Lot and Abram have this large amount of possessions, right? At this point, we start to see why God told him to leave his family.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, it's so much to the point where now their workers starts to get into it, right? They beefing, and it get to a point where even
it's not enough land.
It's not enough land. Even Abram, like, I don't want us to beef.
Yeah.
So we need to figure something out.
Yeah.
You got to go. Like, either you can take left or right, but he tries to make an offer
he try to have some level of a agreement, right?
Of agreement, yes.
Hey, you go your way, I go my way, because we have too much, and the way we living, at least how I understand it, the way we living, we both gonna have nothing at this rate.
Yes.
So either you could go this way or I could go this way, but we both can't be here together.
Yes, and again, this brings me back to my point of this is why God told him, leave your family.
Yep.
Lot had no business being there from the very beginning, and now you're dealing with this. He's literally, like, just imagine, like, you got everybody fighting and stuff, and you're like, this would have never happened if I would have left you.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I know you was trying to look out for your nephew, but that's not what God told you to do.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's true.
So in this whole process, he gives him this offer, like, you can either take left or right. And I really feel like now we truly see that his faith in God is on another level. It's stronger than before. Reason why I say that, for him to say you can either take the left or right, that just shows whichever way I go, I'm going to be all right because God is going to take care of me. I think now he's convinced I'm going to be taken care of regardless of which way,
That's a good point.
Whichever way
that's actually a good point. So essentially,
I go.
Yeah, I mean, you can go left, you can go right, whichever. You just need to get away from me.
You just need to go. Your peoples, y'all got to go.
You ain't got to go home.
But you got to get the... So at this point, it mentions that when he made the offer, Lot lifts his eyes up and he see this land that's well watered, and this is the land of Jordan, right? And I think this is where we see the difference between walking by faith and walking by sight. Where Abram was walking by faith, but he's like, either way, right?
Whichever way you go, doesn't matter.
I'm straight, right?
Straight, yeah.
Versus Lot, it specifically says that he lifted up his eyes and he saw something, like he saw something beautiful. A beautiful land.
Literally, the grass looked greener.
It looked greener.
Yep.
Yeah. And he's like, oh, I want that land. I'm going to take that land. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Even though, because it mentions that he's moving closer or he's moving by Sodom, right?
Yeah.
And we know that this land is a very sinful land. So he let his eyes, his sight, send him into a land of sin.
Yep.
A land that goes against God.
Back to who? That took me right back to Eve.
Eve, yeah. I knew that when I read it, I thought about
Eve.
Your point that you made about Eve. Yeah.
Yeah. It took me. It took when I saw the lifting of the eyes. It was like, okay. The eyes are deceiving him. Yeah. He's tempted now.
He's tempted, yeah.
He's tempted. Okay, I'm going to go here because Lot clearly is just about wealth.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So he's like, he done got used to it now. Everywhere he go, he bringing in money. There's a level of entitlement there, I think. So he's like, that grass looks green.
I'm going over there.
I'm going to go take it.
Yes.
You can have your little stank old land. Right?
You go to the dry parts.
You can go over there, bro. All right, cool. You can have this. I'm out. Yeah. So
after the Lord appears to Abram again.
As soon as he left. Yeah. I peeped that too. I was like, so check this out. As soon as Terah died,
he appears.
As soon as Lot leaves,
he appears.
So God is this goes back,
and that's why I said the delays.
Yeah, no, and I agree. This is one of those everybody can't go situations. I said I had something for you.
Yes,
something for you, Abram.
Yes,
I don't want Lot here because we see what Lot on. I don't want Terah here because we see what Terah. Like this is the thing when you look at the personalities involved, and we know that Abram also lacked some faith. We know that, but Lot, what this shows to me is kind of a little bit of greed, right? Because think about it. Lot strolls in, is not Lot's wife, right? Yeah. Not Lot's sister.
Yeah.
So the way I see it is Lot is kind of benefit. He's mooching off of that. Yeah, he's mooching, right? He's not giving up anything, but he's getting, right? When you look at the Terah situation, I think that was just all pagan. Like God was not messing with that.
Yeah.
So all right, now I need Lot to go, and Lot is gone because he sees something greener.
Yes.
Right. And now I can bless you the way.
Yes.
I wanted to bless you.
Yes.
A long time ago.
A long time ago. But now that you got it together, you have figured it out, and I had to intervene.
Yep.
Right. I had to be the one to interact because I really do feel like God allow all of that to happen so that Abram can eventually move the way he need him to move.
Yeah. Yeah.
I do believe that sometimes, like, I know a lot of times we may think that is the devil. You know, I know I'm the main one. I be quick to blame the devil, right? But sometimes God do allow situations and it may be the devil. And God may allow the devil. I don't know. Yeah. But I do believe God allows situations to happen in order for us to move.
How else do you learn?
How else do you learn? How else do you...
I mean, honestly...
If you're complacent,
this is one of those moments, and this is why, because God wears so many hats. God is supposed to be our father, right? What's a parent's job? Like, as I can teach you, I can tell you, which he did. He told Abram what he needed him to do. But then when you're not listening,
sometimes
now
you need to push.
now I got to let you learn. Now I got to watch you get yourself into something. And I think this is one of those situations. And then when you done got yourself too far, you can't get out of it. Then here come God to save you again. But it taught him, right? So like now when he leaves, his mindset is a little bit different. Yes. He's okay separating from Lot. Yes. He's okay because now he realizes, okay, I had to be saved here. I don't want that to happen again.
So now God tells him to lift up his eyes now and look at the place where you are, northward, southward, eastward, westward. For all the land which you see, I will give to you and your descendants forever. And I do want to point out one thing, because as we can see, God is telling him to look with his eyes, right? But there's a difference between what's happening here with Abram versus what happened with Lot. When Lot was being led by himself. Versus Abram, when Abram was looking, he was being led by God. I did want to point out this verse from Psalms 32:8, where the Lord is speaking. He says, I will instruct you and teach you in the way you should go. I will counsel you with my loving eye on you. And
that's what we're seeing.
That is exactly what we're seeing here. And just like that was happening then during Abram's time, it is still very true to today. The Lord will instruct us in which way we should go. We just have to be very sensitive to his voice and be willing to submit to his plan, even if we don't understand it.
Yeah.
You know, because I'm pretty sure in this, right, even here, Abram still probably did not understand God's plan. You know, you're telling me this is my land, but this is somebody else's land, for real.
That seems to be common in the Bible, right? Where it's pretty much, that's what walking by faith is, right? It's knowing that, okay, I can't see the top of the stairwell.
Yeah.
But I got to take one step at a time and trust that there's another step there because God said it's there.
Yes.
And then he gives them the command, right? Arise, walk the land in length and in breadth.
In the New King James Version, it said, arise, walk in the land through its length and its width, for I give it to you. And I thought this was very interesting that he asked him to walk the land. Walk the land of what I am promising you. Walk the promise. And immediately I just had this revelation where I thought about the Bible. The Bible has over 7,000 promises to men. How do you know what those promises are if you don't walk through it?
Oh, okay.
How do you know what is rightfully yours?
Yeah.
Because when we become Christians, we are adopted into the kingdom. We are called God's heir.
When we get saved.
When we're saved,
yeah.
Right? When we receive salvation. Once you are adopted into the kingdom, once you are an heir of God, every promise is yes and amen. Every promise. But
if you don't read it, how would you know?
If you don't walk the land, if you don't walk it, how do you know what those promises are?
I like
that. And in this case, God specifically wanted him to walk that land to know what he was promising him. I've been telling you this whole time, but I need you to see it for yourself. And I just thought that was very, very interesting. And it made me think about all the promises that we have here available to us.
That's interesting. I like that. Yes. That's a good way to close that.
Yes.
I think that was a great way to close this story.
Yes.
Walk the promises.
Yes.
Walk the promises.
Walk the promises. Walk through it to know it.
That's what we're doing
here. Know
it
for yourself.
That's what we're doing
here. That
is
exactly what we're doing here. Trying to find it out for ourselves.
Yes. Yeah. So, I mean, I enjoyed this episode. I'll be honest. There was so much to be pulled from it.
Yes.
So much to be pulled.
I told you. I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
It's a lot to unpack here.
Yeah. No, for sure. And just, I think the biggest thing I pulled from today was everybody can't go.
Everybody can't go with you.
If you're trying to bring everyone, God will delay that blessing because that blessing is not for them. That's what I took from today. I think that's the biggest lesson. And I think that's the hardest too, right? That's the hardest, especially when you love people. And we've all been there. It's funny because like the older you get, the more you realize this on your own. Maybe if I would have read the Bible, I would have learned this faster. But you know, how many times have you told your friends, like, just, hey, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this, because you're trying to bring them with you, and they just like, and it's because it just wasn't for them.
Yeah.
And you gotta accept that. The older I get, I do accept everything is not for everybody.
Yes.
Some blessings are just for you, and maybe if they did it, it wouldn't be a blessing for them too. Because I've seen that happen where, like, I've talked somebody into doing something that was good for me, but their personality, it didn't match who they were.
Yeah.
Right? Because
it wasn't their purpose.
God had for me to do. And even though it was a great opportunity, God didn't have it for them to do. They should have been doing something different.
Yeah.
And I think
you always know when you're aligned with God's will, because if you're not, you typically feel very unhappy.
Yeah.
You feel unfulfilled. You feel some type of void there. But when you're walking according to his will, there's some fulfillment there.
No, 100%. 100%.
I definitely agree with you when it comes to not being able to take everybody with you, especially on this walk, this Christian walk. It can be very lonely. It can be very lonely sometimes. Like, sometimes God has shed people off. They may be somewhere different.
Yeah.
In their walk or whatever phase God or season that God has them in.
Lot.
Like a lot, right?
Yeah, we watched it.
Lot, and I'm sure we'll read more about Lot's story later.
Yeah, but I thought, because you look at Abraham and Lot, like, think about what they done together, right? Like, we went into Egypt together. We done came up together. They done got out rich together. They done, and deceitfully.
Because Lot knew he was lying, and Lot didn't talk him into being truthful.
No, well, Lot didn't believe in God. This is what I'm taking from it. Because Lot, we don't get any indication that Lot believed in God. Not one.
Yeah.
He ain't building the altar. He ain't talking to God.
Yeah.
So he probably looking at Abraham kind of crazy, like, dude, you keep that. You can keep that.
Yes.
Hey, if what you're doing getting us money, cool. It seems like it's kind of that going on.
Been there, done that.
Exactly. So, all right, I'll take this part of it. You can keep the rest. So it seems like that's happening, and I think there's a lesson to be learned there as well. So, I mean, did you have anything else you wanted to highlight, or?
No, I think we hit all. I think we hit them all.
All right, so we can close it out.
Thank you guys for joining us. We truly appreciate having you guys on this journey with us. Please like, share, subscribe.
Yeah, and don't be afraid. Comment. Let us know your thoughts.
Whether you agree, disagree,
we love it. We love to read them. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, if you have a different opinion about something, or you have a revelation about something, let us know. We're all learning. We're all on this journey to just get to know God more. It's essentially what we're trying to do here. So
let's walk these promises.
Let's walk these promises together.
All right, so with that, next Sunday we're gonna go over chapters 14 through 16.
What you said?
14. All right, chapters 14 through 16.
All right, see you guys next Sunday.
Peace.